The parking lot stretched endlessly under the orange glow of flickering streetlights. Wind carried the faint rustle of shopping carts, the lonely hum of late-night trucks passing by the highway. Derrick Cole leaned against the hood of his old sedan for a moment, buttoning his Walmart security jacket before walking toward the sliding glass doors that opened with a hollow hiss. Inside, the store was half asleep. The scent of disinfectant hung in the air. Aisle signs swayed slightly under the AC draft. Derrick nodded at the janitor, who pushed a mop bucket across the floor without making eye contact. It was always the same faces, the same hours, the same silence. He clocked in, adjusted his radio, and began his patrol. His footsteps echoed down the empty toy section, the security monitor's grainy images flickering behind him. He took out his phone, thumb hovering over Alyssa's name. Home. And typed. Heading in. How's your night going? He waited, watching the dots appear for a moment, then vanish. No reply. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, trying not to overthink it. Alyssa had been working late shifts at the diner lately. She was probably busy, but the silence between them had grown noticeable, like static between radio channels. Derrick stopped by the employee break room, poured himself weak coffee, and stared at the corkboard full of forgotten notices, lost keys, staff birthdays, a thank you note from management dated months ago. He remembered when Alyssa used to bring him coffee in the early days of their marriage, back when his night shifts felt temporary, not endless. A voice came through the radio. Security check. Zone 3. Copy that, he replied. His own voice sounded distant, mechanical. He walked through the garden section, flashlight beam cutting across rows of plastic plants and boxed grills. The clock ticked past 1 a.m. Outside, rain began to drizzle, tracing soft streaks down the glass doors. Derrick stared at the reflection of his face, tired, unshaven, 35, but looking older. He thought of the last time they had a real conversation, not about bills or groceries, but about them. He couldn't remember when that was. His phone buzzed suddenly. A message. Heart quickening. He pulled it out, but it was just a store alert, an automated system test. He sighed, rubbing his eyes. Man, you ever feel like the store's alive? The janitor mumbled as he passed again. Derrick gave a faint smile. If it is, it's a lonely one. The janitor chuckled softly, disappearing down the aisle. Derrick stood for a long time after that, watching rain blur the neon sign outside. The night felt heavier than usual, thick with something unspoken, something waiting. He didn't know it yet, but this was the last ordinary night of his life. The rain hadn't stopped by morning. Derrick drove home beneath gray clouds, wipers thudding rhythmically against the windshield. The world outside looked washed out, colorless, tired, like the way he felt inside. He parked in the driveway of their small single-story home, noticing Alyssa's car already there. For a moment, that sight brought relief. Then came the quiet thought. She wasn't awake when I left last night. Did she even notice? He stepped inside. The faint smell of perfume lingered in the living room, mixed with coffee. Alyssa was in the kitchen, hair tied up, scrolling on her phone. She barely looked up. Morning, Derrick said softly, hanging his jacket. Hey, she replied without meeting his eyes. You just get off. Yeah, slow night. She murmured, typing something quickly before locking her screen. He poured himself coffee and leaned on the counter. For a moment, they stood in silence, two people sharing the same air, but not the same warmth. He wanted to ask who she was texting, but he didn't. Instead, he forced a smile. Remember when we used to eat breakfast together? Pancakes on Saturdays? Alyssa gave a faint laugh. You were never awake before noon back then. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Guess we were happier when I slept through the mornings. The tension sat between them like unwashed dishes. Flashback. 2 years earlier, summer sunlight spilled through the same kitchen window, lighting up a younger, softer version of them. Alyssa had flour on her nose. Derrick was trying to flip pancakes with exaggerated seriousness. You call that a flip? She teased. Hey, I'm a security professional, not a chef. She laughed, swatting his arm playfully. You're my professional pancake burner. Back then, everything was laughter and lazy mornings. They dreamed about saving for a bigger house, starting a family. Derrick remembered how her eyes used to light up when he came home, like he was someone she'd waited all day to see. The sound of her phone buzzing snapped him back to the present. She glanced at the screen, smiled faintly, then flipped it face down. "Who's that?" Derrick asked, trying to sound casual. "Just someone from work. Schedules." He nodded, pretending to believe her. Alyssa worked at a local diner now. Late hours, unpredictable shifts. The kind of job that didn't leave much room for connection. At least, not the kind he wanted. When he left for his night shift, she was usually getting ready for hers. Passing each other like strangers at a train station. A quick kiss, a half smile, a promise to talk tomorrow. Tomorrow rarely came. He started noticing small things. Her laughter fading when he walked in. Her phone always angled away. The scent of unfamiliar cologne when she hugged him. None of it screamed guilt, but together it whispered. That evening, Derrick sat alone on the couch as the TV murmured in the background. Alyssa was at work, or so she'd said. He stared at his phone, scrolling through old photos of them, smiling, sunlit, uncomplicated. He typed a message, "Miss you tonight." He waited for a reply. 10 minutes passed. Then 30. Nothing. He placed the phone face down on the coffee table, his reflection flickering faintly in the dark screen. Outside, the rain started again, soft, steady, endless. Inside, something in him began to shift. The rain had eased by the time Derrick arrived for his next shift. The air outside Walmart was damp, heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and diesel. He parked in his usual spot near the security booth. The glow of his dashboard clock reading 11:42 p.m. Alyssa hadn't texted back since morning. Not even a single word. He told himself she was just tired. People get busy. Relationships change. But his chest still carried that slow, familiar ache. The one that had been growing each day like rust on metal. Inside the store, the same dull hum of lights greeted him. He nodded to the night cashier, checked in at the security office, and began his routine patrol. Every aisle, every flicker of the monitor, all painfully ordinary. Yet beneath that surface, something restless moved. Around midnight, during his break, Derrick sat in the cramped security room with its buzzing fluorescent light and a table scarred by years of cigarette burns. His thermos sat half empty beside an old tablet, Alyssa's, which she'd left on the passenger seat of his car earlier that day. She used it mostly for recipes and bills, or so he thought. Out of boredom, he powered it on, intending only to check the time. But the screen unlocked instantly, no password required. A message notification blinked at the top. You looked amazing tonight," his breath caught. He stared at the screen, heartbeat hammering. Another message slid in below it. "Can't believe you got away with that kiss," he froze. For a long moment, Derrick simply stared, as if reading someone else's life. Then his thumb moved almost against his will, opening the conversation. The thread stretched back weeks, late-night chats filled with emojis, inside jokes, playful teasing. The tone was unmistakably intimate. Alyssa's messages shimmered on the screen, full of warmth he hadn't seen from her in months. "You make my nights better. Wish you could see me right now." "He's at work again, LOL." Derrick felt the ground tilt beneath him. His hand began to shake so badly, he almost dropped the tablet. No, this can't be what it looks like," he muttered, voice trembling. He scrolled faster, reading every line, every timestamp, each word slicing deeper. The name M appeared over and over. MMM. The repetition burned itself into his thoughts. Marcus. He whispered. The name was familiar. One of Alyssa's co-workers from the diner. The one who always offered her rides when Derrick couldn't. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. For a long time, he didn't move. The hum of the security monitor filled the silence. Outside, a truck rumbled past the lot, headlights briefly illuminating the room. Derrick's reflection looked back from the tablet's dark screen, hollow-eyed, defeated. He wanted to confront her right then, to call and demand an explanation. But instead, he placed the tablet down gently, almost reverently, as though afraid it might explode under the weight of his anger. He deleted nothing. He didn't even reply. He just stared at the messages until the words blurred together, when his radio crackled to life. Security. Check on loading dock. Possible alarm trigger. It startled him back to the present. He grabbed the radio. Voice tight. Copy that. As he stepped into the quiet aisles again, the world looked different, colder, sharper, stripped of color. Every shadow felt suspicious. Every reflection reminded him of her laugh. By the time his shift ended, the tablet still sat untouched on the desk, its screen black again. But the words inside it were seared into his mind, glowing behind his eyelids whenever he blinked. That night, when he drove home and parked outside the dark house, Derrick didn't go in. He just sat there, engine idling, watching the porch light flicker on and off, wondering who she might be texting right now. He didn't know it yet, but soon, he'd see that same car again, parked under the same flickering light, and the truth would no longer hide behind a screen. The following week crawled by in a blur of half-slept mornings and restless nights. Derrick barely spoke to Alyssa. When he did, her voice felt distant, polite, distracted, like a stranger reading from a script. She said she was working extra shifts to cover a coworker's leave. He nodded, pretending not to remember that from the messages worked at the same diner. Each time she left the house, he found himself glancing at the clock, then at his phone, then at the window. The hours between her heading out and home now text stretched longer and longer. That Friday, the air was colder. A fog rolled through the parking lot like smoke, curling around the light poles. Derrick's shift began at midnight. He arrived early, still haunted by the messages burned into his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw them. Alyssa's words, that laughing emoji, the line that said, "He's at work again." He clocked in silently, checked the monitors, and walked the aisles with robotic precision. But something gnawed at him, an unshakable feeling that tonight, something would happen. By 2:15 a.m., the store was nearly empty. Only the overnight stockers worked in the back, music low in their earbuds. Derrick stepped outside for his routine patrol of the lot, flashlight cutting through the fog. The night was thick and quiet, save for the soft buzz of the streetlights and the distant hum of highway trucks. That's when he saw it, parked near the far end, just past the security camera's reach. A silver sedan. Familiar. Alyssa's car. He froze. For a long moment, he stood there, trying to convince himself it couldn't be hers. But the dent on the rear bumper, the faded air freshener dangling from the mirror. He knew that car like he knew his own heartbeat. Derrick's breath quickened. He turned off his flashlight and moved closer, sticking to the shadows cast by the lampposts. The fog muffled his footsteps. As he neared, he could see faint movement inside the car. Two silhouettes, one leaning closer to the other. He stopped behind a pillar, close enough to hear faint laughter through the cracked window. Her laughter. Then a man's voice, low, warm, familiar. "Marcus." Derrick's hand gripped the cold metal of the pillar to steady himself. "No," he whispered. "Please, no." Alyssa's face turned toward Marcus, illuminated by the dashboard light, soft, smiling, unguarded. Then, slowly, she leaned in. Their lips met in a brief, unhurried kiss. It wasn't wild or secretive. It was gentle, comfortable. The kind of kiss two people share when they've done it before. Derrick's world went soundless. The fog, the parking lot, even his own heartbeat vanished beneath the shock. He wanted to run toward the car, to rip the door open, to scream, but his legs wouldn't move. The only sound was the faint creak of his leather belt as his body trembled. He watched for what felt like forever, until they finally parted. Alyssa laughed again, touching Marcus's arm before starting the car. The taillights flared red through the mist as they pulled away, leaving Derrick alone under the humming lights. He didn't chase. He didn't call. He just stood there, staring at the empty space where her car had been. His reflection shimmered faintly in the wet pavement, a hollow figure in a security jacket, surrounded by nothing but fog and betrayal. When he finally walked back toward the building, the radio on his shoulder buzzed with static, but he didn't hear it. His mind replayed one image over and over, Alyssa's face lit by someone else's laughter. By the time he reached the door, his hands were still shaking. He didn't know if it was anger or heartbreak. All he knew was that something inside him had cracked, quietly, permanently. and cracks, left long enough, always spread. Derrick didn't sleep that morning. He sat in the driver's seat long after his shift ended, hands gripping the wheel, the image of Alyssa and Marcus looping through his mind like a cruel film reel. Every time he blinked, he saw that kiss, soft, familiar, undeserved. By the time dawn painted the sky pale gray, his decision was made. He'd confront her. No more guessing, no more pretending. But when he walked through the front door, the words died before they reached his lips. Alyssa stood in the kitchen wearing one of his old sweatshirts, hair damp from a shower, humming to herself as she poured coffee. She looked ordinary, innocent, like nothing had happened. The sight confused him, softened his anger just enough to keep him silent. "You're up early," she said, glancing at him. "Yeah," Derrick muttered, hanging his jacket. "Couldn't sleep." "You've been working too much. You look exhausted." He almost laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that never escaped his throat. Instead, he nodded and took the cup she offered. He wanted to scream. "Who were you with last night? Why was your car in the lot?" But the questions clung to his tongue like lead. She smiled faintly, unaware of the storm behind his eyes. "I'm working another double tonight. The manager asked me to cover." He forced a smile. "You're always helping someone." It was the closest thing to confrontation he could manage. The next few days became a blur of silence and surveillance. Derrick tried to pretend everything was normal, but his world had narrowed to one obsession, the truth he already knew, but couldn't say aloud. He started checking her social media late at night, scrolling through her photos, analyzing every comment, every like. When she showered, he glanced through her call history, memorizing numbers he didn't recognize. One name kept appearing, Marcus D. He copied the number into his phone, but never dialed it, just stared at it. At work, his concentration unraveled. He missed radio calls, ignored coworkers, wandered aisles lost in thought. When the manager asked if he was okay, he just said, "Didn't sleep much." Each night on patrol, he'd glance at the same corner of the parking lot, the one where her car had been, expecting to see it again. Every empty space mocked him. The isolation became a second skin. He stopped talking to friends, stopped answering calls from his brother. Even small noises, the buzz of his radio, the ring of a customer's phone, set his teeth on edge. The voice in his head grew louder with each passing hour. "You already know the truth." He began whispering it without realizing. At the coffee maker, in the locker room, alone in his car. "You already know the truth." The sentence became a mantra, painful, addictive. It was easier to repeat it than to accept what it meant. One night, as Alyssa slept beside him, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her phone vibrated quietly on the nightstand. His hand hovered over it, shaking, but he didn't touch it. He didn't need to. He'd already seen enough. Her breathing stayed steady, peaceful, unaware. He turned away, eyes open until dawn. By morning, something in him had gone numb. The anger no longer burned. It simply existed. Heavy, quiet, patient. That patience wouldn't last. Derrick didn't sleep that morning. He sat in the driver's seat long after his shift ended, hands gripping the wheel, the image of Alyssa and Marcus looping through his mind like a cruel film reel. Every time he blinked, he saw that kiss, soft, familiar, undeserved. By the time dawn painted the sky pale gray, his decision was made. He'd confront her. No more guessing, no more pretending. But when he walked through the front door, the words died before they reached his lips. Alyssa stood in the kitchen wearing one of his old sweatshirts, hair damp from a shower, humming to herself as she poured coffee. She looked ordinary, innocent, like nothing had happened. The sight confused him, softened his anger just enough to keep him silent. "You're up early," she said, glancing at him. "Yeah," Derrick muttered, hanging his jacket. "Couldn't sleep." "You've been working too much. You look exhausted." He almost laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that never escaped his throat. Instead, he nodded and took the cup she offered. He wanted to scream. "Who were you with last night? Why was your car in the lot?" But the questions clung to his tongue like lead. She smiled faintly, unaware of the storm behind his eyes. "I'm working another double tonight. The manager asked me to cover." He forced a smile. "You're always helping someone." It was the closest thing to confrontation he could manage. The next few days became a blur of silence and surveillance. Derrick tried to pretend everything was normal, but his world had narrowed to one obsession, the truth he already knew, but couldn't say aloud. He started checking her social media late at night, scrolling through her photos, analyzing every comment, every like. When she showered, he glanced through her call history, memorizing numbers he didn't recognize. One name kept appearing, Marcus D. He copied the number into his phone, but never dialed it, just stared at it. At work, his concentration unraveled. He missed radio calls, ignored coworkers, wandered aisles lost in thought. When the manager asked if he was okay, he just said, "Didn't sleep much." Each night on patrol, he'd glance at the same corner of the parking lot, the one where her car had been, expecting to see it again. Every empty space mocked him. The isolation became a second skin. He stopped talking to friends, stopped answering calls from his brother. Even small noises, the buzz of his radio, the ring of a customer's phone, set his teeth on edge. The voice in his head grew louder with each passing hour. "You already know the truth." He began whispering it without realizing. At the coffee maker, in the locker room, alone in his car. "You already know the truth." The sentence became a mantra, painful, addictive. It was easier to repeat it than to accept what it meant. One night, as Alyssa slept beside him, he lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her phone vibrated quietly on the nightstand. His hand hovered over it, shaking, but he didn't touch it. He didn't need to. He'd already seen enough. Her breathing stayed steady, peaceful, unaware. He turned away, eyes open until dawn. By morning, something in him had gone numb. The anger no longer burned. It simply existed. Heavy, quiet, patient. That patience wouldn't last. Rain slid down the windshield like silver threads as Derrick pulled into the Walmart parking lot. The sky hung low and heavy, a storm pressing down on the empty town. He parked near the loading bay, the wipers squeaking a slow rhythm that matched his pulse. Another night, another shift, but tonight felt different. The air carried a charge he couldn't explain. Something in his gut whispered that the waiting was almost over. He clocked in, signed the nightly patrol log, and made his rounds through aisles washed in fluorescent light. The hum of refrigeration units and the soft buzz of overhead bulbs filled the silence. Every sound felt amplified, as if the store itself was holding its breath. By 11:30, the rain intensified, hammering the metal roof. He took refuge by the back exit, sipping coffee that had gone lukewarm hours ago. His reflection in the glass door looked hollow, eyes sunken, mouth tight, uniform damp at the shoulders. He thought about Alyssa, about the way she'd slammed the door, about her car disappearing into the night, about how he hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't tried to fix anything. The words she'd thrown at him echoed again. "You need help." Maybe she was right, but maybe it was too late for help. Near midnight, a pair of headlights pierced through the curtain of rain, sweeping across the slick asphalt. The parking lot was otherwise empty, save for a few carts rolling aimlessly in the wind. Derrick's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. The car slowed, turned, and parked far from the entrance, the same shadowed corner where he'd seen her before. His breath caught, even through the rain-streaked window. He recognized the dent on the rear bumper, the small pink air freshener hanging from the mirror. Alyssa's car. He felt the blood drain from his face. "No," he whispered. "Not again." He stepped outside, the cold rain soaking instantly through his uniform. Water dripped from his cap as he moved closer to the edge of the lot, careful to stay hidden behind a row of abandoned carts. Inside the car, shapes moved. Two silhouettes. Her hand brushed someone else's shoulder, a man's, broad and familiar. Marcus. Lightning flashed, brief and merciless, illuminating the scene. Alyssa leaned across the console, laughing. That same laugh he hadn't heard in months, before pressing her lips to his. The light vanished. Darkness swallowed the lot again. Derrick stood still, the rain drumming against his skin, each drop a needle against his flesh. His flashlight hung at his side, trembling in his hand. For a long moment, he couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world had narrowed to the sound of his heart, pounding, uneven, violent. He took one step forward, then another. The distance between them felt infinite, and yet painfully close. But then, headlights flashed again from the street, a delivery truck passing by, and Derrick froze, retreating back into the shadows. He couldn't move, couldn't confront. Not yet. The rain poured harder, blurring everything. The car, the figures, even the pain. When the lights inside the vehicle finally dimmed, he stayed there, drenched and shaking, watching the two people who had once been his entire world disappear into the storm. Inside the store, his radio crackled faintly. The sound snapped him back to his uniform, his duty, the mask of calm he was supposed to wear. But as he stared out into the dark, that mask began to slip. Because Derrick Cole knew, this night wasn't ending like any other. Something inside him had already shifted. The rain had softened to a steady hiss, washing the lot in silver. Derrick's breath came out in short, uneven bursts, fogging the inside of his collar. His flashlight beam trembled across the asphalt, catching puddles that shimmered like fractured glass. Through the misted window of Alyssa's car movement, a flash of her hair, her hand tracing slow circles on Marcus's arm. Their laughter, faint but real, carried over the rain. Derrick felt his pulse in his throat, hammering so hard it drowned out the world. He took a single step closer. The beam of his flashlight reflected off the car's chrome trim and scattered, glancing across Alyssa's face, just long enough for him to see her eyes. Soft, familiar, full of warmth. But not for him. For someone else. His knees nearly buckled. He pressed a hand against the nearest cart rail to steady himself. "Alyssa," he whispered, the sound instantly swallowed by the rain. His security radio crackled at his hip. "Unit 4, status check, you copy?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. The voice blurred into static, meaningless noise beneath the roar inside his head. All he could hear was her laugh, that same melodic tone that used to fill their kitchen when they danced barefoot after dinner. Now it belonged to another man. He lifted the flashlight again, and this time, his hand didn't shake. He aimed it straight at the car. The beam sliced through the fog, illuminating everything. Her face, his hand, their closeness. Marcus turned first. Their eyes met through the glass. The man's expression shifted, confusion, then realization. He said something, gesturing quickly to Alyssa. She turned, her smile fading, her mouth forming a name he couldn't hear. "Derrick." The sound of her muffled voice pierced through the downpour. Derrick froze, caught between rage and heartbreak. The flashlight slipped from his hand, clattering against the wet pavement. Its beam rolled away, casting wild arcs of light across the rain-slicked lot. He felt empty, completely hollow. Alyssa's door opened. The sudden interior light bled into the darkness, warm and wrong. She stepped out, hair plastered to her face, the rain soaking her thin jacket in seconds. "Derrick, what are you doing here?" she shouted over the storm. He couldn't form words. His lips moved, but nothing came. His vision blurred, tears or rain. He didn't know. Marcus exited from the passenger side, defensive, cautious. "Hey man, this isn't what it looks like." Derrick's laugh was sharp, unrecognizable. Don't say that. I've heard that line in movies, and it's always a lie." Alyssa stepped closer, her voice cracking. "You shouldn't be here." He shook his head. "Neither should you." Lightning flashed above them, bleaching everything white for a heartbeat. When darkness returned, Derrick saw his reflection in the car window, soaked, trembling, eyes wide with disbelief. He barely recognized himself. Behind him, the radio crackled again. "Unit 4, come in. You get out there." He reached for it, hesitated, then switched it off. The silence that followed was deafening. Alyssa and Marcus exchanged a glance, one that said everything words couldn't. Something inside Derrick shattered quietly, invisibly. He stepped backward, staring at them both, the rain cascading off his uniform like melted steel. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, each step heavier than the last, his mind replaying every moment that had led him here. The rain kept falling. The world stayed silent. But deep inside Derrick Cole, something dangerous had awakened, and it would not go back to sleep. The storm had grown colder, sharper. Every raindrop felt like glass against Derrick's skin. He stood motionless in the parking lot, drenched, staring at Alyssa and Marcus through a haze of disbelief. His heartbeat drowned out the rain. His mind pulsed with one single thought that no longer felt like language, just noise. She took a hesitant step toward him. "Derrick," she said, voice trembling. "You're scaring me." He blinked, barely hearing her. The flashlight lay forgotten at his feet, its beam flickering weakly against the puddles. His hands hung at his sides, fingers twitching. Somewhere deep inside his chest, something fractured completely. "I gave you everything," he murmured. "Everything, Alyssa." Marcus stepped forward, hands raised. "Man, just relax, okay? Let's all go inside and talk." Derrick's eyes shifted toward him, and for a moment, something ancient, something primal, looked back. "Talk," he whispered. "You've already said enough." His hand went instinctively to his belt, to the holster he always carried, out of habit, a precaution for safety on lonely shifts. He'd never drawn it before. Not once. Not even when danger came through the doors. But now, the danger was standing in front of him, wearing his wife's perfume. Alyssa's eyes widened as she saw the glint of metal. "Derrick, please don't." Her voice cracked, a fragile sound that barely rose above the storm. He hesitated. For a single, fleeting second, the weight of what he was doing crashed through him. His arms shook violently. His vision blurred. He saw her, not the stranger in front of him, but the woman he'd once danced with in their living room, barefoot, laughing. "You promised me forever," he said softly. Tears streamed down Alyssa's cheeks, mingling with rain. "I made mistakes," she cried, "but I never meant to." The next sound was raw and deafening. One shot. The flash lit up the lot, brief and brutal. Alyssa gasped, stumbled backward, and fell against the car door. The echo rolled across the wet asphalt, bouncing off the empty store walls and into the black sky. Marcus screamed her name, stumbling toward her before freezing mid-step, eyes wide, hands shaking. Then instinct took over. He turned and ran into the night, his shoes splashing through puddles as his silhouette vanished between parked trailers. Derrick stood frozen. The gun felt impossibly heavy now, an anchor dragging him down. The echo of the shot seemed to keep ringing, even as the world went still again. Rain hissed around him. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed faintly, or maybe it was just his own heartbeat. He dropped the gun. It hit the pavement with a hollow clatter. His knees gave way, and he sank beside her, reaching out with trembling hands. "Alyssa!" Her eyes fluttered once, finding his. No words came, only the sound of rain, filling the space where their lives used to be. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was punishment. The sirens came fast, a wailing chorus that sliced through the storm. Red and blue light flickered across the wet asphalt, bouncing off raindrops like shattered glass. Derrick didn't move. He sat in the middle of the parking lot, soaked, hands trembling, eyes fixed on the gun lying inches from his knee. Steam rose from the barrel. His breath came in short, jagged bursts. "I just wanted her to tell me the truth," he whispered. The words repeated like a broken record, quieter each time. His voice no longer sounded like his own. Hollow, drained, mechanical. A cruiser screeched to a stop. Doors slammed. Boots splashed through puddles. "Put your hands where we can see them," a voice shouted through the rain. Derrick didn't respond. He barely heard. His gaze stayed locked on Alyssa's still body. Her hair clung to her cheeks, her hand half curled as if she'd tried to reach for him. One of the officers, young and nervous, kept his gun trained as another rushed forward, kicking Derrick's weapon away. The metallic clatter echoed into the night. "Hands up. Now." Derrick's arms rose slowly, movement sluggish, as though underwater. The cuffs clicked around his wrists with cold precision. He didn't resist, didn't even flinch. Lightning split the sky above them, and for an instant, the entire scene froze. Alyssa, the gun, the pool of rainwater darkening beneath her, the flashing lights painting the world in horror. Minutes blurred into hours. Paramedics arrived, their radios crackling, their gloved hands moving fast, but without hope. Someone covered Alyssa's body with a white sheet. Derrick watched from where they'd sat him on the pavement, knees drawn up, lips moving silently. A senior officer crouched in front of him. "Derrick Cole, you understand your rights?" Derrick blinked at him, unseeing. Rain dripped from his hair onto his uniform. I didn't mean to, he murmured. I just wanted her to look at me. To tell me the truth. The officer exchanged a glance with his partner. We'll talk about that downtown. Another voice nearby muttered. Body cams rolling. Get everything. The red and blue lights pulsed against Derrick's pale face. In the footage that would later circulate across news stations, his expression looked vacant, as if the soul had already left his body. He turned his head slightly, watching as the sheet lifted in the wind, revealing a glimpse of Alyssa's hair. He wanted to reach for her one last time, to undo it all, but the steel around his wrists reminded him. There was no undoing this. The radio on an officer's shoulder crackled. Male suspect in custody. One victim deceased. Scene secured. Those words echoed louder than the gunshot, as they guided him toward the cruiser. Derrick looked once more at the store behind him, the empty aisles glowing under sterile lights. It had been his second home, his refuge. Now it was his prison. The car door slammed shut. Rain tapped softly against the window as they drove away, leaving behind the flashing lights, the chaos, and the woman he had once promised to protect. The walls of the interview room were the color of ash, flat, lifeless, unblinking. A single fluorescent light hummed above Derrick's head, casting a harsh white glow across the metal table. The sound of rain still echoed faintly from outside, distant now, like a memory trying to fade. He sat motionless, hands cuffed in front of him, a thin blanket draped across his shoulders. His uniform clung to his skin, still damp from the storm. The smell of wet concrete and coffee filled the air. A digital recorder clicked on. This is Detective Carla Mendez, St. Clair County PD, interviewing Derrick Cole, timestamp 3:47 a.m. Her partner, Detective Hollis, leaned back in his chair, flipping through a folder thick with photos and printouts. You've been read your rights, Mendez said gently. Do you understand them? Derrick nodded slowly. His eyes looked hollow, unfocused. Tell us what happened tonight, she continued. He exhaled, long, shaky, as if the words themselves weighed too much to carry. I didn't plan it, he said finally. I swear, I didn't plan to hurt her. Mendez's tone remained calm. Then what did you plan? He stared down at his cuffed wrists. To see. To know if what I felt was real. I just couldn't stand being invisible anymore. The detectives exchanged a glance. Hollis slid a photograph across the table. A still from a security camera. Alyssa's car, headlights cutting through the rain. This was taken at 12:03 a.m. You were outside the store minutes later. You had your firearm on you. I always have it, Derrick murmured. For work. Not for that, Hollis said. Derrick's lips parted, but no words came. He looked older now, smaller, like the storm had stripped years from his face. Mendez leaned forward, voice quiet. Derrick, when you saw them, what did you feel? He swallowed hard. Nothing at first. Then everything. Like the whole world pressed down on me at once. I couldn't breathe. He lifted his head. Tears rimmed his eyes, but his voice stayed steady, eerily calm. It wasn't rage. It was silence, like something broke inside and let the noise in. And when it snapped, I didn't even know I'd pulled the trigger. The room fell silent except for the faint buzz of the light. Mendez pressed the stop button on the recorder. The click echoed like punctuation to a confession no one wanted to hear. She stood slowly. We'll arrange for you to contact an attorney. As she and Hollis left, Derrick's reflection stared back at him from the one-way mirror, pale, trembling. A man both victim and monster. He whispered to it, almost to himself. I just wanted her to tell me the truth. No one answered. Outside the room, Mendez closed the file and sighed. Get the DA on the line, she told Hollis. This one's going trial. The sound of metal doors echoed through the hallway, slow, deliberate, final. Derrick Cole sat on the narrow cot, elbows on his knees, staring at the small barred window high above the gray concrete wall. A sliver of winter light pushed through, cold and colorless. He had stopped counting the days long ago. In the distance, another inmate laughed, that hollow kind of laughter that never reached the eyes. Somewhere, a guard's keys jingled. The rhythm of prison life was precise, predictable, unyielding. Derrick had learned to move with it, to fade into its sameness. Every morning began with the same metallic clang. Breakfast trays, roll call, silence, and in those long hours between, memory became both his punishment and his only company. He still saw her face sometimes, not the way she looked that night, but how she used to look. Sunlight in her hair, that careless smile when she'd tease him for overbrewing his coffee, the way she used to touch his arm in passing, grounding him to the world. Now, those moments replayed like film reels cut too short, flickering and broken. When reporters first came, asking about the Walmart tragedy, Derrick refused interviews. But after the trial, after the sentence came down like a stone, he started talking, not for sympathy, not to clear his name, but because silence had already cost him everything. "You don't notice the distance at first," he said once to a prison counselor, his voice soft, detached. "It starts as a few missed calls, a shift change, a tired excuse. You tell yourself love can survive that. You believe routine is stability. But really, it's erosion." The counselor didn't respond. She just wrote something in her notebook, eyes unreadable. At night, Derrick often replayed that last line he'd told the detectives. "I just wanted her to tell me the truth." It felt heavier now, because maybe, deep down, he hadn't wanted the truth at all. He'd wanted control, to feel seen again in a world that had quietly moved on without him. He stared at the small Bible on his desk, its pages warped from damp air. Beside it lay a worn photo, him and Alyssa, smiling on their porch, years before the distance began. He touched the edge of the picture, like it could still change something. In the prison yard, they sometimes let him work maintenance, fixing fences, cleaning the walkways. The routine gave him peace, almost purpose. But even then, every clang of metal, every echo of footsteps, reminded him of that other parking lot, where a flashlight fell, a scream broke through rain, and his life split in two. The nights were the worst. The air turned colder, the silence thicker. Sometimes he spoke softly to no one, words trailing into the dark. "Jealousy doesn't start with anger," he murmured once, voice trembling. "It starts with silence, with not saying what hurts, with pretending you're fine." Those were the words the prison chaplain wrote down later, the ones that would close a documentary about the case. Derrick's voice, monotone but heavy, played over slow footage of the Walmart parking lot, the same cracked pavement, the same flickering light above the store sign. Now, the lot was just another place people parked, shopped, left, a story buried beneath routine. The camera lingered there as his narration faded. "If someone's slipping away from you," his voice said faintly, "don't chase them with suspicion. Reach for them with truth. Because once you let the silence speak for you, it never shuts up." The frame dimmed to black. Somewhere, beyond the prison walls, rain began again. The sound was almost soft, like forgiveness, or maybe the memory of it.